At the very beginning, let me pay my deepest homage to the namesake of Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of the nation, who was assassinated in this month on the 15th. So my deepest respect to the memory of Bangabandhu and all the martyrs of that fateful night. Also, my respect to the 4 national leaders and all the martyrs of the freedom movement, war of liberation, those are known and unknown. And of course, those who were killed on the 21st of August, 2004. I want to congratulate the BIISS for really not only organizing this webinar, but also for doing a great job by collecting the good materials for the book, which will be launched later. We have just heard from Professor Hussain and also the chair, and a very good historical perspective has already been set here. So I will not be going into the history so much. I will be instead talking about his exceptional leadership and also his quest for inclusive development and Bangladesh. Indeed, he is the namesake of Bangladesh. And the state formation which he led in Bangladesh is exceptional, as Professor Hussain has already mentioned about it. The Pakistan which was created was not his ideal. It was a false dawn for him. He did not want this Pakistan. But anyway, reality he had to accept. But then he started his movement for the project or the concept of Bangladesh right from the day one he landed to this part of Pakistan, and defying all the challenges of the Cold War, the illiberal and impractical, cruel state called Pakistan. Bangabandhu really continued his journey and emerged as the most successful leader in this part of the world, who was aesthetic, who was transformational, who was pragmatic, and also compassionate. All his moves, including his development moves, were always pragmatic. And I'm sure the 2 ministers will bear with me. Only 3.5 years he was in charge of the country. And around that time, he really promulgated and got as many as 130 plus laws in place. He transformed a provincial government into a central government. He created all the institutions, including the central bank, in such a short period of time, and led the country to a very prosperous journey, which was not allowed to continue. He was pro-poor, pro-growth, pro-gender, pro-environment, pro-peace, and of course, a global in his outlook. No doubt, James Manner, Professor James Manner, gave a talk called Understanding Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman at SUAS, where I studied also at the University of London on 10th of April, 2018. And there he said, Bangabandhu stood out among many other leaders who were also fathers of their nations for at least 3 reasons. Number one, his secular views. A true secular leader, not an ethnic nationalist he was. He dropped the word Muslim from the name of his party to make it much modern and a secular party, which really led the war of liberation. Again, he was an organizational man. He always believed in organization. He emphasized building organization at the grassroots, left the position of a minister to serve as the party general secretary, and he really cared for his followers, and they too really respected him. He was a compassionate leader and always understood them very well. He was also very flexible, as Professor Hussain has indicated. He was always open for dialogues and negotiation, even in the worst of the circumstances. He was not at all a hot-headed agitator, as some people would like to put him. And remember, after 7th March, there was hardly any scope for negotiation with Pakistan, but he was very, very open to President Yahya Khan and Bhutto around that time, knowing fully that they were the culprits. But even then, he really he really negotiated with them to give the world a chance to understand that he was at the receiving end, not at the front. So that kind of leadership really helped him become the most legitimate spokesman for the Bengali, because he was riding on the popularity of the Bengalis who voted him in an overwhelming, out of 169 seats, he got 167. So he was the natural leader, a natural elected leader. But then, even then, with that leader, he told that even one of the members of the Constituent Assembly or the National Assembly really differed, he would take care of the differing views. That was the Democrat, a born Democrat as he was. His movement for Bangladesh really started at the early stage, and he always really cared for the people. The ordinary people was at the center of his struggle for independence. Bangabandhu's politics was focused on realizing the rights of the marginalized. If you remember, when he came back from Calcutta and he started the language movement, he said that this was not a movement for language only. It was later, he said on the 21st of February in 1953 in Armanitola, that this was our life and death question, Jibon Moronel Lorai. And then he said this was the struggle for our accommodation, for our education, and for our rights. So it was, and there was a socioeconomic perspective of that movement. Again, when authorities didn't respond to his normal demands, because he used to make demands, as you remember, even at the early stage, he worked, he really led the dawals, the farmers, the casual farmers who used to work for many of the rich farmers could not collect the wages in paddies, and he really went out for them to really make this dawal movement. But he would then ask for it and would always try to negotiate. He led political movements to realize the rights. Only when the political movements were foiled by the conspirators, he started leading the struggle for independence with arms. So you must see that inborn, he was a Democrat, but he was just. His idea, the supreme goal of his war of liberation or his entire lifetime movement was to achieve a society without exploitation. This was the core of the development philosophy of Bangabandhu, and that's why I said it's the quest for inclusive development was his biggest goal. On 15 December 1973, he said, "This independence will be meaningful to me only when the woes of the farmers, laborers, and the deprived of Bangladesh end." And I think this echoes very well with Professor Hussain's, Rajshahi madrasa speech on that what I want that everyone should have a food. What I want that everybody should really smile. Those kind of ideas were inbuilt into his thinking of independence. If you remember, he started rebuilding Bangladesh simply standing on the ashes. He was standing on the ashes of the world. He had to reconstruct the worked on infrastructures without any resources in hand. He had to rehabilitate 10 million refugees who were not having food, so had to organize food for them, reconstruct about 2 million houses who were internally displaced. He had to rehaul the regulatory institutions, including the central bank, as I told you. And, standing on that odds, he was really on the very first meeting with the Professor Nurul Islam, our teacher. He started this planning commission for Bangladesh and the 5-year plan. And he asked them to go for the 5-year plan because he wanted to have a planned approach to development. And at the same time, he was coping with the natural calamities and adverse geopolitical climate. I'm sure all of you are doing strategic research. The nasty diplomacy of Pakistan around that time was, poisoning the minds of most of the global leaders. And unfortunately, some of them really succumbed to their, the bad negotiation and diplomacy. And many of the countries were doing bad politics called food aid politics around that time. And Bangladesh had to suffer for that. Literally, he had to start the journey from zero. The economy size of the economy was only $8 billion, which is now 350 plus billion. There was not even a single dollar in the foreign exchange reserve around that time. The savings to GDP ratio around that time was only 3%. And the investment to GDP ratio was only 9%. And the investment GDP ratio is now 32 plus, savings 31 plus, and the reserve is about $48 billion. What a journey. What is transformation. This could only be possible because of the strong base he set for us. And also for the last 12 years or so, his daughter is playing a very, very far-sighted and decisive leadership role. So all that made it possible. His foundation for a very strong Bangladesh was his constitution. Not many constitutions in the world would have so many developmental, issues imprinted in the constitution itself. He had 4 citizen-based agenda or the pillars of the constitution. Number 1, nationalism, where he identified that the identity of the nation, the Bengali identity, and the self-respect as Bengalis. The second was socialism, which he said, I'll not borrow it from anybody. This was an equitable society with local realities in mind. This is with a democracy in mind. And also he had democracy, which was parliamentary system to ensure people's participation. And finally, I think this is the most decisive one, is the secularism, combating communal forces and maintaining social peace. The other day, Professor Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, was speaking on him in London School of Economics. And he said, Bangabandhu is the Bishwabandhu, because the world trend of world, mainly because of his interpretation of secularism. His interpretation of secularism was that, religion, you have all the freedom of religions, no problem, but you cannot use the religion for politics. So that was his interpretation. And he said that this interpretation of secularism is so needed even in the today's world. So many countries are really falling victims to the fundamentalism and other religious-based problems that we are witnessing in the geopolitics of the region. Bangabandhu's constitution ensured opportunities for all. Not only he emphasized on democracy and human rights and decentralization, he was for free and mandatory education. One of the three most important policies of Bangabandhu at the very early was that he nationalized primary education. He gave employment to about 100,000 of the primary teachers, and again 30,000 primary schools were nationalized. This was a big move. Secondly, he went for social consciousness raising for family planning. That was another great move. Thirdly, he went for around that policy of decentralizations and democratic movement from the ground, and he was always in favor of people's rights. So he went for rural development, agricultural revolution. In fact, the third one, I'm sorry, was the food, food autarky. He said it's very humiliating for a leader like me to really beg for food, and when there is a food aid politics, so you have to become surplus in food. And he gave so much of emphasis on agriculture and rural development. Emancipation of the workers was also written in the constitution. Cooperation fostering private sector was there, right to employment and basic needs approach, and a special focus on women's in emancipation was also written in the constitution. So in fact, later we also added in the constitution the preservation of the nature. So these are fantastic constitution that we now have. He was always in favor of education. He prioritized education for emancipation of the masses and advocated investing 4% of the GDP for education. In 1970, when he gave this pre-election speech, he said that we need at least 4% of the GDP in education, which even today we could not go that far. So he was so farsighted. He, created this Kudrat Khuda Commission to train a workforce that will be optimistic about the country. And the Kudrat Khuda election commissions, the ideas were to develop a workforce that was humane, secular, committed, and is morally strong. And he wanted also to develop leadership, character, respect for physical labor, and Bangla to be the medium of instruction. Another idea was science and technology education should get the priority, prioritizing education for girls and women. And finally, the goal of higher education to create graduates who will work for an equitable society. These were the ideas of education, the inclusive development I'm talking about. And education is the road to civilization, as you all know. So he was really mending the small roads to go to that higher ends of civilization. He worked on two legs for balanced development. Agriculture was one leg, industry was his other leg. Agriculture to provide food for huge population, the largest portion of the workforce of the newly independent country to be employed in agriculture. Agriculture will supply raw material for industries and demand for goods. And that's why he said that there is no alternative to increased agricultural production in the context of the politics of aid, the nasty politics of aid. I'm sure the foreign minister would clearly understand that because he has been negotiating. So on the strategy for industrialization, he was, of course, initially for state-led, development, but he was not closed. His ideas were not closed. He had windows for private sector and also for the cooperatives. The state took the initial responsibility of industrialization because all the entrepreneurs were Pakistanis and they left suddenly. So there was no option but to take, again, the commitment for his style of socialism was also inbuilt into this state-led industrialization that we saw. And the first 5-year plan emphasized on creating an enabling environment for the private sector as well. And back in 1974-75, he raised the ceiling of really private investment from 2.5 million taka to 30 million taka just overnight, and 133 abandoned units were handed over to private sector. So he was not against private sector. He was just waiting and balancing. Even today, we have a strong state sector, but again, private sector is playing its interesting role. So he was indeed the leader, was the driving force. Professor Nurul Islam, the deputy chairman of the Planning Commission during Bangabandhu's period, said, "We assume that to widespread mass popularity of apex of the ruling party, especially the prime minister, leading to a strong control over the structure of the party and owing to his imposing personality, it will be possible to keep the power factions in and out of the party in a balanced state." So he really thought he was the biggest capital for leading the Bangladesh to an inclusive development. He was also a global leader with far-sighted foreign policy. I'm sure many of you have been doing research, and this book must have included chapters on that. I just quote from his speech at the UN that will say that I know how global he was. He was local. He was global. He looked inside. He looked outside. So he was a very balanced leader. He said, "We can look forward to a world where human creativity and the great achievements of our age in science and technology will be able to shape a better future free from the threat of nuclear war and based on sharing of technology and resources on a global scale, so that men everywhere can begin to enjoy the minimal conditions of a decent life." Even in his foreign policy, he's bringing the people's decent life into his foreign policy. So he was so much a humane leader, a compassionate leader. And again, with him, he started with minus 12% growth. And that country really moved forward under his leadership. And despite resource constraint, he was committed to building infrastructures, human capital for attaining inclusive development. And you see this in this diagram, that he started with a per capita income of only $93. By 1975, he reached $273. And minus, in his absence, Bangabandhu's absence, next year, it was $138 per capita income, dropped from 273 to 138. And the next year, 77, it was only $128. And within less than 4 years, per capita income almost triple, as we have seen. But the nation got derailed when the Bangladesh or Bangabandhu was killed on 15th August. After it took 13 more years to really reach 1975 per capita income. It took us up to 1988 to go up to $270 as a per capita income. So you can understand the magic of the leadership who really took the country forward in 3 years, and then we ended up in a dark age. I don't want to go into that. I'm almost done. I could speak for hours, but now I want to really concentrate on his leadership quality and conclude. The traits that made him a great leader, he could generate emotions. He used to encourage the people to struggle for decades. Secondly, he also had the magnanimity of developing co-leaders. He mentored those who eventually oversaw the war of liberation. They never let us feel that he was not physically with us. His ideas, these co-leaders were so meaningfully steered the war of liberation along with him as the top. He believed in maximization of engagement. He could reach people from all walks of life in liberating and reconstructing the country. And he had long-term vision. He was not always short-term. He had long-term vision, like his daughter, who is now thinking about 100 years of Delta plan. So he always dreamt of a prosperous Bangladesh, Sonar Bangla, and emphasized on long-term planning for people-centric transformation of Bangladesh, truly a transformation leader. Heads off to him. I will just now recite a poem from Shamsur Rahman to pay my homage to this greatest of the great leaders, not only of Bangladesh, but also of the world. Hail that man on whose name the sun shines down eternally. Like a song comes down the rains of Shravan, whose name never collects dust. Hail that man over whose name the moonlight crane spreads its wings. Hail that man on whose name liberation flutters like a flag. Hail that man whose name echoes in the victory cries of freedom fighters. Dhanno shei purush jar namer upor rodro jhore, চিরকাল গান হয়ে নেমে আসে শ্রাবণের বৃষ্টি ধারা, যার নামের উপর কখনো ধুলো জমতে দেয় না হাওয়া। ধন্য সেই পুরুষ যার নামের উপর পাখা মেলে দেয় জ্যোৎস্নার সারস। ধন্য সেই পুরুষ যার নামের উপর পতাকার মতো দুলতে থাকে স্বাধীনতা। ধন্য সেই পুরুষ যার নামের উপর ঝরে মুক্তিযোদ্ধাদের জয়ন্তনী। Let's pay homage to that great man, the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And as well as let us celebrate our independence on his birth centenary and also the golden jubilee of Bangladesh, the freedom he gifted us. Let's celebrate it. Thank you so much. Joy Bangla.